Let's speak with Peter Conradi firstly, Europe editor at the Sunday Times. Afternoon to you, Peter. It's not an entirely new question, of course, and, you know, we've had this lengthy relationship with the United States, and we always kind of, I suppose, historically think of this kind of, in more recent history or relatively, the Thatcher-Reagan thing, sealing it very much. We speak the same language, etc. But then, of course, there's the EU, which is just on our doorstep, and we were, for decades, part of it. Where is the future for this country, do you sense?
I think the future is probably as it's always been, stuck between the two, really, and trying to get the best out of both worlds and hoping not to be left with the worst out of both worlds. I mean, I suppose I was going to quote Lord Palmerston, the 19th century Prime Minister. Who
I thought you were going to say Lord Mandelson then for some horrific moment.
Less about him the better.
Indeed. Sorry, do continue, Peter.
Britain has no eternal allies and we have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual. So, I mean, in a sense, I suppose we in Britain have got to take what we can from the Americans and take what we can from Europe and the Europeans, but bear in mind that both of them are not going to do us any favours, and their interests are also eternal and perpetual in this same context.
That's very true. And Mr. Trump, of course, never hides that fact. You know, he's all about America, and that's clearly his job, by the way. Shouldn't be criticised for doing that. But I suppose when it comes to special relationships, there's the obvious trade stuff, and we all understand that, and there's some encouraging multi-billion-pound announcements over the last few days, plus what's already in the works, and of course those relationships economically and otherwise that we've had for many years. But we do also have those with the EU, don't we? I mean, there's quite a lot of wonga that goes between the two regions.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of wonga, as you put it, going both ways, just because of geographical proximity. You know, we are so close to Europe. We've always done, even before we were in the common market we did an awful lot of our trade with Europe because it's just a massive market right on our doorstep, and we're going to continue trading with them. But as we found with Brexit, or the aftermath of Brexit and the negotiations, that the Europeans strike a very, very hard deal, as they did with us. They want certain things with us. I mean, under Keir Starmer, we're obviously edging to a closer, more amicable relationship with, but I mean, particularly with France, where I'm based, but with the EU as a whole. But the bottom line of it is that they want things for us. I mean, at the moment, one of their demands remains freedom of movement for young Europeans to come to Britain, to study, to work, to do that kind of thing, and the way the EU works is to tie together completely unrelated subjects. So, very complicated discussions about kind of veterinary standards and on letting in food products and so on without controls can be tied in with something apparently completely different, like, we want more German students to be able to come to Britain. Yeah.
What is the biggest block for trading? I mean, is there a figure on that? I know kind of people, it does sort of divide the room a little bit. Is it the EU or the United States? Because as you rightly say, they're both huge, they're both important, they're both intrinsic within our kind of economic plans and vice versa. But is there a kind of categoric number in terms of which one is best for us?
I should have the numbers in front of me, and I don't.
No, I wasn't expecting. I mean, I put you slightly on the spot there, Peter. But you'll be aware that there is this sort of debate. Well, collectively, it might be the EU, and but then the EU also, have a different way of counting trade or something like that.
Exactly. I suppose probably and speaking a bit off the top of my head, but I think it probably boils down to physical goods on the one hand and services on the other. So with physical goods, geographical proximity, just 12 miles or so across the channel, is an important factor. You're not going to ship relatively low value products. Not that I'm not sure we make many of those anymore, but around the world. Whereas it comes to services, sort of financial services, the other kind of services that Britain is particularly good at, which we tend to have a surplus in, then distance is no object. So America's just as good a trading partner as the Europeans. But I think a point you made at the beginning is crucial. The cultural thing, the fact that we all speak the same language, you can't underestimate the importance of that, I think, just in ties, the way we see them, and also the way they see us, as Trump put across in his speech yesterday evening at Windsor.
Yeah, indeed. Peter, thank you for your time, sir. Really great to have you on. Peter Conradi, Europe editor for the Sunday Times. Thank you to him. Let's move to Brian Monteith, former Brexit Party MEP. Afternoon to you, Brian. I can imagine where your allegiances are, probably not with the EU, bearing in mind you voted and campaigned and worked there in order to leg it from that, crazy bureaucratic system that they called an EU Parliament, etc. Nonetheless, you never said, I never said, we want to stop trading with the EU. Of course we do. That was almost the point, wasn't it? Trade with them, not be run by them. So yeah, we want to trade, but where do you sense our prime allegiances are? With the United States or with the EU in terms of trade and the like?
Well, not only am I Scottish, I'm British, and I'm European. And I stayed in France for some 11 years whilst working as an international consultant. So I don't easily fall into the I'm much against Europe as such. I believe in British sovereignty, just as Trump believes in US sovereignty. And where I see our interests lying is in deciding what's best for Britain. And that means negotiating good deals with countries around the world and getting the best out of them. And if I may just answer a question you put earlier, the largest market is in fact the United States. It used to be the EU when we were in it. But once we left, it lost our GDP and the US became the largest market. But more importantly, what we can see over time, certainly in the last couple of decades, is how far the United States has pulled away from the EU in its prosperity, in its growth. If we look at average purchasing power, it's 100 for the EU in 22. It's 153 per person for the United States. And for Britain, it's just 106. If there's a message there, it is that we need to look at what the US does in its domestic economic policy and replicate the best parts of it.
Yeah. And when the other side of this question, I suppose, in terms of where is our future, the issue about where we kind of feel more comfortable, where we find commonality, etc. And notwithstanding the fact that, and you will know better than me on this, Brian, Europe is full of the most wonderful cities and countries and cultures, and there's all sorts going on. But are we closer culturally and otherwise to that than we are to the United States?
I think there's a certain aspect of the interplay that we've enjoyed culturally with other European provinces, countries, regions, because the Europe we see today is not the same as the Europe in previous centuries. It's constantly moved and evolved, and flows of people have from the European continent have influenced us as they settled in Britain. As we saw them compose music for our royal families and so on.
Sure.
So that is there, and it cannot be denied, and it can be further developed. But then, having had the United States decide, as it did by some 6 votes in its early days, to adopt the English language, we have a very strong bond with the United States, and I think we look to that culturally for ideas, and certainly for our service industries, our creative industries. It's a huge market, and that's where the future for us lies, not in heavy metal working and manufacturing. In fact, if you look at JCB, one of our great exports, they of course now have factories in the US. That's the type of British manufacturing we need to be putting it out there into other countries, not just in Britain.
Yeah, spot on. Brian, appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much indeed. He is Brian Monteith, former Brexit Party MEP. Where do you feel instinctively as a Brit listening to this? You look over there and there's Donald Trump and the United States and all that they stand for. I'm not just talking about Trump. I mean, look at the country. We can obviously talk about the language, that's a given, but everything else that goes with it, culture, commonality, friendships, etc. Where do you sense instinctively you would plant your flag of allegiance? Would it be in the United States or would it be in the EU? 0344 499 1000. Let's speak with Kevin Marr, former Labour advisor. Afternoon to you, Kev. I mean, I might take a guess at where you would go with that question, but tell us anyway. Where should we be sending the Christmas cards first? Over the Channel or over the Atlantic?
At the risk of making this sound like a cop-out, we need to do both, really. I mean, culturally, yes. Look, I watch as much American TV and American films as anybody else does, and culturally, there's a great connection there, which is vivid and strong and deep-rooted. And there's lots of people in America with heritage in Europe, and of course in Britain as well, and Ireland particularly as well. So it feels like a place. Yep. That we can always do business with. It feels like a place that is always home. But I mean, just to pick up really the point Brian was mentioning a few minutes ago, the American economy and the American standard of living is very different than what we're used to. I mean, I feel very sorry often for blue collar working class Americans who get virtually no holiday leave. 2 weeks is the usual run for even people doing rather well. Cost of living is pretty high. The healthcare situation is abominable and all the rest of it. I'm not quite sure if you took your average Brit and sort of said, here you go, you have to take America lock, stock and barrel, that they would actually like the American social model as much as they like the British social model, which is far closer to the European model. So whatever rows we have with the French or the Spanish or the European neighbours, I mean, they know how to do their grub. I think it's fair to say, and I think if it was a toss-up between taking US chlorinated chicken or French cuisine or Italian food or Spanish food, I think most people would probably jump into the European category. So yes, we have our rows and we rub up occasionally with the Europeans, as we have done for hundreds of years. That's not unexpected. But I think when the chips are down, our social model is much closer to Europe, and in fact, I think most people would think, well, if we could have as many holidays as the French do or the Spanish do, we'd probably be even better off. So
maybe that could be true. I should add, I did once have a manky plate of mussels in Marseille, so they don't always get it right. In terms of the future with this government, there's always lots of from your party, lots of speculation that Keir Starmer wants to gradually take us back into the EU. The only thing I would say in his defence, a lot of the stuff that he's working on, Rishi Sunak would have been working on as well had he won the election. A lot of this stuff was going to be happening. The sort of young people's right of passage to travel, that was always on the agenda. But instinctively, we know that Keir Starmer did agitate and advocate for, even a second referendum to remain in the EU. Do you think, and as objectively as you can, Kevin, I know that's very hard for a lefty, but give it a go. Do you think it's possible that Keir Starmer will take us deeper than perhaps many people desire?
I don't think it's on the agenda anytime soon at all. I think who knows down the road. Our economy is still very intertwined with the European Union. We're in a bit of a funk. The European Union's in a bit of an economic funk as well. Better days will lie ahead, and who knows at that point how we'll feel down the road at that point. But I think Keir Starmer's objective today and objective over the next few years is to keep the Trump administration, keep the US engaged in Europe and engaged in the world. And I think to be fair to Keir Starmer, he's having some success in doing that. He seems to be well regarded both by Donald Trump and other key European and NATO allies as well. He's trying to keep Trump in the sphere of the coalition of the willing, as it's become known, that we're going to have to try and hold the line with Ukraine because of fears of Russian expansionism. Beyond that, this is an incredible moment in global history. We've not seen anything like this since the Second World War. All kinds of forces are rampant around the world. The US has got its own kind of headaches in its Pacific backyard, where it's worried about Chinese expansionism and a potential invasion of Taiwan as early as 2027, and there's lots of wargaming that's been going on in the Pacific in recent days over there as well. So this is an incredible moment where Britain has an opportunity to fulfill a role that it's played really for 70 years and played it very well, which is to act as a bridge between Europe and the United States. And, we can see that, I think, in full flight over the last 24 hours, with the royal family seemingly playing a blinder in courting the Trumps, and Keir Starmer getting down to some serious negotiations, which seems to have delivered a huge US investment package into the UK. So that relationship is absolutely essential. Britain playing the role of the bridge between the old world and the new world, as it would be, between America and Europe. And at the moment, he seems to be doing a pretty decent job, I think.
We will watch with interest what that press conference brings a little later. Hope you got your popcorn ready, Kevin. Lovely to have you on with us. Kevin Marr, former Labour advisor. Great. I don't think I've ever spoken to Kevin before. What a lovely man as well, and that's his perspective on it. He might be, a Labour man, but I thought he was fairly objective on things.